Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you how I made this real looking watermelon cake. I got inspired by Yolanda from How to Cake It. I was watching her video and I saw her do it and I said I have to do it myself as well. However, I didn't follow all her steps. The inside of the cake, it's a red velvet cake, and I followed John's recipe from Preppy Kitchen. All the recipes that I have, I keep them in a binder, and every one of them it's wrapped into this plastic sheet. So when I work, I place it on the table, and if I accidentally spill something on it or something splatters on it, I can easily wipe it off. I'm not going to list the ingredients that I'm using. If you want the recipe, you can go to Preppy Kitchen and get it from John. And I encourage you to go to his site because he does beautiful work. My focus right now is just on how I did it and how I ended up to where I did. Okay, let's start with the dry ingredients first. The flour, the baking soda, and the salt. Sift it really well and then give it a good stir. And set it aside. Put the butter in the mixer. The butter should be at room temperature. Once it's soft, add the sugar. And then once it's well incorporated, the eggs. The eggs go in one by one. Once the first one is mixed really well, you can add the second one. And of course, you have to stop and scrape the sides of the bowl. You have to do it a couple of times. And then keep mixing it until the batter becomes light and fluffy. And now it's time to add the vanilla. And set it aside. Over here I have the buttermilk waiting, and I'm going to add the food coloring. Since I don't have measurements of how much to put, I have to figure out myself. I added a few drops, then I kept adding and adding, and in total I ended up with about 10 drops. And the color that I'm using is red tulip. And in goes the vinegar. Give it a good stir, and now everything goes in the mixer. The wet ingredients, the dry ingredients, and everything gets mixed very well. One thing I have to say, I did not add the cocoa powder as the recipe asks, because I figure out if I put the brown cocoa powder, my mixture of the color and with the brown would not give me the watermelon looking color that I was looking for. So even though it's red velvet cake, and the red velvet cake does have cocoa powder inside, I skipped it this time. I am very pleased with the color. Really looks like watermelon. So let's add the chocolate chips as seeds. I put about 1/4 of that bag, but you can put as much as you want. You can make it as seedy as you want or no seeds, your choice. Most of the batter I baked into the 6-inch baking pan, and a little bit I baked into that mixing bowl to get that rounded layer for the top of the watermelon. It's time to make the cream cheese frosting. My butter is creaming here, and in goes the cream cheese. The cream cheese is at room temperature. Makes it a little bit longer. It's nice and creamy. Let's add the vanilla and a sprinkle of salt, and of course the powdered sugar. Be sure to have the shield on and start at the slow speed, otherwise the sugar will come into the room. Let's color match the frosting. I put a couple of drops in, and then I check the color against my cake, and I keep adding and adding. So in total I ended up putting about 10 drops of the red, 1 drop brown, and 1 drop orange, and then a couple of chocolate chips again, like 1/4 of a bag. It's time to assemble the cake. So I'm going to place a small amount of the frosting on the cake board. This way my cake will attach to the cake board for stability so it doesn't slide off. I put the frosting in a piping bag, but you don't have to. You can put it directly on the cake. It looks like I'm using a lot of frosting, but it's just the angle where I'm videotaping from. It makes it appear that way. Time for the second layer. And the very top layer, which is a little bit dome shaped. That's why I put it into that mixing bowl when I baked it. And now I'm going to place it in the freezer to harden up. It's time to make the buttercream to make the outside of the watermelon. Over here I have 1 pack of butter, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, literally 4 sticks of butter. That's how much I have here. And I'm going to add 2 pounds of powdered sugar and 2 spoons of milk. Everything gets mixed up. All depends how soft your butter is. If your butter is like really soft, you need less milk. If it's harder, you might need more. Depends on where you live as well. But this worked for me today. Most of the buttercream is going into the piping bag. About 2 cups of it I'm going to set aside and color it a very light green. Alright, cake is out of the freezer. And I'm placing a layer of white buttercream around the cake. Try to spread it as evenly as you can. When I watched Yolanda's video, she does not use buttercream for this part. She is using fondant. However, I prefer to use buttercream, even though it's much easier with fondant. And goes in the freezer again. Now it's out of the freezer, and I'm using gloves for this part here. I'm going to smoothen off the imperfections there with my gloves on. My hands being warm, it kind of melts the butter and it gives it this smooth finish. Just a little bit more, and it's time for the green. And again, a very thin layer of the green goes on. I also like to use the bench scraper. Kind of helps me a lot. Between that and the offset spatula, I'm set. And I want you to pay attention towards the end where I'm tilting the bench scraper inward at the bottom to get that roundness a little bit right there. I don't know if you can see, but there we go. To make it look more like a watermelon. And a little more smoothing with the offset spatula, and it goes back in the freezer. For about 10 minutes or so in the freezer. It's out of the freezer, gloves back on, and continue smoothing. If I were to do this again, I would not smoothen it as much as I did, only because in reality watermelons are not that perfect. And not to mention that I still have to color the stripes of the watermelon, and in that process all the imperfection would have been covered off. So I'm using this paper towel to clean the bottom of the cake board here from everything that I got on it. In this measuring cup I have 2 spoons of milk, which I need to color a little bit darker than my watermelon. My way of getting the color out of the container is with a clean toothpick. It works really good for me. Otherwise, whatever else I've tried before kind of gets too much coloring, but the toothpicks seems to work perfect. For this part, either a paintbrush or a sponge will do the job. Let's keep going. Almost done with this. And now it's time to add a little bit more color into the remaining milk to make it darker for the stripes. I feel like I'm back in school in a painting class. It's a lot of fun. And slowly but surely, the watermelon begins to look real. What do you think? It looks pretty good to me. I'm going to use this plastic tool with this round end to create that stem on the watermelon. So I'm going to push gently into the cake to create that divot. There we go. And for the color, I'm going to use this warm brown. It only takes a drop. Just a little bit. There we go. And color the entire area. Looks pretty normal, pretty natural. Looks pretty natural, doesn't it? And it's time to cut it open and see what's inside. I'm a little nervous. I don't want to mess it up right now. Let's see, it's going to be a mess or success. My watermelon seems ripe. Surprise! I am very pleased with the result. My cake looks really like a watermelon. I couldn't be happier. Yeah, it took a little bit. There are a few steps involved, but I have to say it was worth it. Let me know what you think. And if you decide to make it, let me know what the challenges you had, if you did anything different. And thanks for watching.